This moment didn't arrive with clarity or confirmation. It began as fragments, half-formed reports, blurry clips, and whispered claims circulating across social media and private group chats. At first, it looked like just another wave of online speculation surrounding a high-profile entertainment controversy. But within hours, the tone shifted. What was once treated as rumor began to feel structured, deliberate, and unsettling. At the center of it all was 50 Cent, and a documentary project that was already generating quiet tension behind the scenes. Known for his ability to shape narratives and control public attention, his involvement immediately elevated the stakes. This wasn't just another media release. It was being framed, by supporters and critics alike, as a project capable of exposing hidden histories, unresolved conflicts, and uncomfortable truths buried within the hip-hop industry. And that's where everything started to fracture. A short clip from the documentary surfaced unexpectedly. There was no official rollout, no structured promotion, and no context. It appeared briefly, spread rapidly, and then disappeared just as quickly. But by that point, it was too late. It had already been copied, recorded, and distributed across platforms. Within minutes, discussion erupted. To some viewers, the footage looked like standard documentary material, raw moments, candid interactions, and unfiltered dialogue. But others saw something else entirely: selective framing, emphasized tension, and narrative shaping that appeared to highlight conflict over context. That interpretation became the spark. Almost immediately, reactions began forming across the industry. Artists allegedly associated with or referenced in the project reportedly started reviewing the leaked material in private. Conversations emerged between representatives, managers, and collaborators. The central concern wasn't just what was shown, it was how it was shown. The difference between participation and presentation suddenly became the core issue. Many involved reportedly believed they were contributing to a controlled narrative environment, one that would reflect their perspective accurately and respectfully. Instead, the leaked segments suggested something more complicated. Moments that once felt minor or contextual appeared restructured in a way that emphasized disagreement, contradiction, or tension. In an industry where reputation is everything, even subtle shifts in framing can carry major consequences. A pause edited differently, a sentence taken out of sequence, a reaction shown without context. Each of these can reshape perception entirely, and once perception shifts publicly, it is extremely difficult to reverse. As the footage spread, concern escalated. Behind the scenes, discussions reportedly turned more serious. Questions around consent, editorial control, and narrative framing began to dominate conversations. Some artists allegedly demanded clarification on how the footage was obtained and whether the final version of the documentary would reflect their intended portrayal. Others took a more cautious approach, choosing silence while they assessed the situation. But silence did not slow the public reaction. Social media transformed the situation into a rapidly expanding debate. Every platform became part of the analysis. Users slowed down clips, zoomed into frames, and replayed short segments repeatedly. Facial expressions, tone shifts, and brief pauses were all interpreted as possible indicators of hidden meaning. What might have been a simple exchange in real time became, online, a coded narrative filled with speculation. Influencers and commentary channels amplified this further. Each breakdown added another layer of interpretation. Some argued the footage revealed genuine behind-the-scenes tensions within the industry. Others insisted it was being overanalyzed, warning that fragmented content rarely reflects full context. But the uncertainty itself became the driving force. One detail in particular fueled additional speculation: brief references and indirect mentions that viewers linked to long-standing industry relationships and past conflicts. Even without confirmation, these references sparked debates about history, alliances, and unresolved disputes. Online discussions quickly expanded beyond the documentary itself. pulling in years of prior interviews, collaborations, and public disagreements. At that point, the situation stopped being just about a leaked clip. It became a broader conversation about control, specifically, who controls the story. 50 Cent's role intensified this discussion. His reputation as a provocateur, strategist, and storyteller is well established. Throughout his career, he has consistently blurred the line between entertainment and real-life tension, often using media platforms to challenge narratives and expose conflicts others prefer to keep private. For his supporters, this makes him uniquely capable of delivering an unfiltered perspective on the industry. For his critics, it raises serious concerns about bias, framing, and influence. Because storytelling is never neutral. Every documentary, interview, or visual project involves choices: what to include, what to exclude, and how to present events. When those choices involve real people with real reputations, the consequences become personal. A single edit can change how an artist is perceived for years. A single framing decision can redefine how an entire career is remembered. That's why the backlash grew so quickly. Reports began circulating that some artists were reconsidering their involvement in the project entirely. Others allegedly began reviewing contracts, permissions, and editorial agreements. Conversations reportedly shifted from concern to strategy: how to protect reputation, how to respond publicly, and whether to issue statements before the documentary's full release. Meanwhile, social media continued to accelerate the situation. Posts from accounts linked, directly or indirectly, to those involved began appearing. Many were cryptic, never naming the project outright, but referencing themes like misrepresentation, selective storytelling, and unfinished narratives. Fans immediately connected these posts to the leaked footage, interpreting them as indirect responses to the controversy. This created a feedback loop. Every new post generated more analysis. Every interpretation generated more debate. Every debate generated more attention. The story grew larger not because of new information, but because of increasing speculation. Fan communities became deeply divided. One side viewed the documentary as a rare glimpse into hidden dynamics within hip-hop, something that reveals truths typically kept behind closed doors. The other side saw it as a potentially manipulated narrative, where selective editing could distort meaning and misrepresent context. Neither side had full information, but both were fully engaged. As discussions intensified, insiders suggested that what had surfaced might only be a fraction of the full material. That possibility introduced a new layer of tension. If additional footage existed, then the current debate might only represent the beginning of a much larger unfolding narrative. And that uncertainty kept everything alive. Within industry circles, attention shifted toward potential long-term consequences. Artists reportedly began reassessing how they participate in future documentary or media projects. The issues at stake were no longer just about one production. They were about how stories are framed, who controls them, and how much influence creators have over someone else's narrative. Because once a story enters the public domain, control becomes fragile. Even if clarification is later provided, initial impressions tend to persist. Clips spread faster than explanations. Reactions travel farther than context. And in the modern digital environment, perception often forms before facts are fully established. That reality is what makes this situation particularly volatile. Every new leak, every new post, and every new interpretation has the potential to shift the narrative again. Nothing is stable. Nothing is finalized. The story exists in motion, constantly evolving based on fragments rather than complete understanding. And at the center of it, 50 Cent remains a focal point, not just as a participant, but as a symbol of narrative power itself. His involvement ensures that attention does not fade easily. Every detail associated with the project becomes amplified, debated, and dissected. As the situation developed further, attention expanded beyond the documentary. Reports began to surface suggesting that something else had occurred, an alleged incident involving 50 Cent that quickly became part of the same swirling narrative. At first, these claims were fragmented and inconsistent. Different versions circulated, each adding slight variations to the timeline. Some described a confrontation. Others suggested a targeted encounter. A few claimed it involved more than a random interaction, implying intent behind the event. However, none of these accounts were fully verified, and details remained unclear. What made the situation more intense was timing. The alleged incident surfaced shortly after the documentary clip circulated widely. That proximity led to immediate speculation about whether the two events were connected. Was it coincidence or reaction? Was it unrelated or part of a larger chain of escalation? Online, theories multiplied rapidly. Some argued it was simply an unrelated event being pulled into a trending narrative. Others suggested it could have been a response to the documentary leak itself. Without confirmation, both interpretations existed simultaneously, feeding into the broader uncertainty surrounding the situation. As more fragments circulated, one consistent theme emerged. Nothing was fully explained. Everything existed in partial form, partial clips, partial accounts, partial interpretations. And that partiality became the foundation of the entire controversy. Because in the absence of certainty, narrative fills the gap. And once narrative takes hold, it begins to evolve on its own. What started as a leaked documentary clip had now transformed into a layered, expanding discussion about influence, reputation, media control, and the fragility of public perception. The situation no longer belonged to a single moment or a single event. It had become a wider reflection of how quickly stories can spiral in the digital age. Every participant, every viewer, and every commentator now plays a role in shaping that story. And as long as new fragments continue to surface, the narrative will remain open, unstable, evolving, and unresolved. Right now, nothing in this situation has been officially confirmed. No detailed statement has clarified exactly what happened, and no authoritative version of events has been released. What exists instead is a growing collection of fragments, reports, leaks, interpretations, and theories that continue to circulate online. Despite the lack of confirmation, the consistency of certain claims, along with their timing, has made it impossible for the public to ignore the story entirely. The internet has become the main arena where this narrative is unfolding. Every new detail, whether verified or not, adds momentum to the discussion. Some people insist the entire situation is being exaggerated, constructed out of rumor, speculation, and incomplete information. Others believe there is something real beneath the surface, something not yet fully exposed. That tension between skepticism and belief is what keeps the conversation alive. Because in situations where information is incomplete, people naturally try to complete it themselves. And that's exactly what is happening here. Each unanswered question becomes fuel for speculation. Every unclear detail becomes an opportunity for interpretation. Every new theory builds on the last, creating a chain reaction where attention never fades. It only shifts direction. And at the center of all this uncertainty is one persistent question. Was this simply a coincidence or something more deliberate and calculated? Some observers argue it may all be random timing, unrelated events being linked together by public perception. Others believe the pattern suggests something more structured, possibly even connected to what was being prepared behind the scenes. Because if even part of that interpretation is accurate, then the situation is no longer just controversy. It becomes escalation, a point where media, messaging, and real-world consequences begin to collide in ways that are difficult to separate. And once that possibility enters the discussion, everything changes. One circulating claim suggests that whoever was involved in the initial incident reportedly left without achieving their objective. While details remain unclear and unverified, that idea alone has fueled further speculation. If true, it implies that something was attempted, something specific was being pursued, and the outcome did not go as intended. But in narratives like this, an unfinished outcome rarely means closure. Instead, it suggests continuation. Because when an objective is not achieved, attention does not disappear, it shifts. It recalibrates, it waits. And that is why people are now watching closely. Because the feeling around the situation is not that it ended, but that it paused. Then the narrative took another turn. Within hours of the initial report spreading, another leak appeared online. This time, it was not connected directly to the documentary itself, but to the alleged incidents surrounding it. A short clip surfaced, grainy, unstable, and difficult to fully interpret. It showed a dimly lit environment, movement in multiple directions, and overlapping audio that made it difficult to distinguish clear dialogue. But there was one moment that captured attention. For a split second, the footage appeared to show a figure resembling 50 Cent stumbling backward before the clip abruptly cut off. That single fragment was enough to transform the conversation. Because now the discussion was no longer just about what people were being told, it was about what they could see, even if unclear, even if incomplete, even if unverified. And once visual material enters a narrative like this, speculation intensifies dramatically. Social media users immediately began dissecting the clip frame by frame. Brightness was adjusted, motion was slowed, sections were zoomed in repeatedly. People attempted to determine whether the footage was authentic, manipulated, or taken out of context. But the problem was simple. No one could confirm its legitimacy, and no one could fully disprove it either. That uncertainty made it powerful, because uncertainty keeps attention locked in place. While public focus remained on the footage, another claim began circulating quietly in the background. According to an unverified source who allegedly saw an earlier version of the documentary clip before it was removed, there was a specific moment in the footage that had not yet been widely discussed. A detail so subtle that most viewers would miss it, but one that, according to this claim, could carry significant meaning for those involved. The implication was not just about what was shown, but what was implied beneath the surface. If true, that changes the interpretation entirely, because it suggests the controversy is not based solely on visible content, but on context, implication, and recognition, things that are far more subjective and far more sensitive. And in environments where reputation and influence matter deeply, even subtle implications can carry weight. As speculation continued, another development intensified public interest. A screenshot began circulating online, allegedly showing a private message that read, "Tell him to stop before it gets worse." No sender, no receiver, no verified source. Just a line of text. But timing made it explosive, because it appeared shortly after both the documentary leak and the reported incident began circulating. Whether real or fabricated, the message immediately shifted the tone of the conversation. What had been curiosity turned into concern. People were no longer just asking what happened. They were asking how serious the situation might become. At the same time, one factor stood out more than anything else: silence. 50 Cent himself made no public statement, no clarification, no denial, no explanation, nothing. For someone known for being outspoken, reactive, and highly visible online, that silence felt unusual. And in public narratives like this, silence rarely reduces speculation, it increases it. Because when official voices are absent, interpretation fills the gap. People began constructing timelines. First, a documentary teaser appears. Then it is removed. Shortly after, Reports of an alleged incident surface. Then silence. To many observers, that sequence felt connected, even if no direct evidence confirmed it. And then came another layer. An audio clip began circulating, short, distorted, and partially unintelligible, but certain phrases stood out clearly enough to spark discussion. Lines like, "He wasn't supposed to drop that, and now everything's exposed," appeared within the recording. Even without full context, those fragments carried weight, because they suggested intention, reaction, and urgency. If the audio is authentic, it implies that something about the documentary leak disrupted expectations, that what was released was not supposed to be public at that time, or perhaps not in that form. And if that is true, then the reaction to it may not have been spontaneous at all. It may have been triggered. That possibility shifted the entire conversation again. What once looked like a simple leak now appeared more layered, more structured, possibly part of a larger sequence of events that had not yet been fully revealed. Social media became the central engine of this evolving narrative. Discussions spread rapidly across platforms. Some users argued that everything pointed toward retaliation or response. Others warned against drawing conclusions from unverified fragments. Both perspectives coexisted, but neither could fully override the other. Commentary creators and influencers intensified the discourse further. Some emphasized caution, highlighting the lack of confirmed facts. Others leaned into speculation, suggesting that if even part of the material was accurate, the situation could be far more serious than it initially appeared. One theme kept returning across nearly all discussions: control. Control over information. Control over narrative. Control over perception. Because if the documentary contains sensitive or revealing material, then its release is not just entertainment, it becomes influence. And influence, in industries built on image and reputation, is power. Another alleged insider claim added yet another layer. According to this source, the documentary was not simply a general cultural exploration, but included specific references tied to real individuals and past events that had not been publicly addressed in detail before. Not vague storytelling, not general commentary, but identifiable references. If that is accurate, the stakes increase significantly. Because once specific individuals are connected to public narratives in ways they did not anticipate, consequences extend beyond discussion. They affect relationships, reputations, and future opportunities. And in entertainment industries, those consequences can last years, even permanently. There is also growing speculation that attempts may have been made behind the scenes to address or influence the documentary before any of this became public. None of these claims are confirmed, but they continue to circulate in discussion threads and commentary spaces. If even partially true, it would suggest that the tension did not begin with the leak. It may have existed long before it. That reframes everything. It suggests that what people are witnessing now is not the beginning of a conflict, but the visible surface of one that has already been developing quietly in the background. And that is what makes the situation feel unstable. Because when you are only seeing fragments of a larger picture, every fragment feels significant, every detail feels loaded, every silence feels intentional. At this stage, there is still no complete version of events, only interpretations built from partial information, clips without full context, messages without confirmation, audio without clarity. Each piece adds to the story, but none of them resolve it. And that is why the narrative continues to grow instead of settling. Because unanswered questions create space. And that space gets filled immediately with speculation. What exactly was in the documentary? Who is affected by it? And are the events unfolding now directly connected, Or are they being linked together after the fact by public interpretation? Those questions remain open, but the impact is already visible. What began as a single leaked moment has now evolved into a multi-layered controversy involving perception, influence, media control, and the fragility of narrative in the digital age. Every new fragment adds complexity. Every reaction expands the discussion, and every silence deepens the uncertainty. And right now, that uncertainty is the most powerful force in the entire situation. Because in the absence of clarity, the story does not stop. It grows. And until more concrete details emerge, the speculation will continue, growing, shifting, and expanding with every new development. In situations like this, silence doesn't close the conversation. It deepens the uncertainty. When official statements are missing and verified facts are limited, people naturally begin constructing their own versions of events. They connect fragments, interpret patterns, and assign meaning to gaps that may not actually contain any. This is especially true when the subject involves a figure like 50 Cent, whose career has long been associated with control of narrative, public provocation, and strategic communication. In that environment, even silence becomes part of the story. What makes the current situation more intense is not what has been confirmed, but what remains unconfirmed. Across social media and online discussions, multiple claims continue to circulate, yet none have been officially verified. There are no formal statements identifying individuals, no clear documentation of events, and no authoritative timeline explaining what actually occurred. Instead, the public is left with fragmented accounts, alleged conversations, rumored warnings, and unnamed sources describing events that may or may not have taken place. This lack of clarity has created a vacuum, and in that vacuum, speculation grows rapidly. If even a portion of these circulating claims reflects reality, then the origins of the situation likely extend far beyond the initial leaked documentary clip. That possibility changes how every subsequent development is interpreted. What may appear to be a sudden escalation could instead be the visible point of a much longer process, one shaped by tension, anticipation, and behind-the-scenes disagreements that were never made public. In that sense, the leak would not be the beginning, but rather the moment everything became visible. At first, public reaction was relatively simple. There was curiosity about what the documentary contained and why a leaked segment was gaining attention. But that curiosity quickly evolved into deeper analysis. People began to examine timing, context, and sequence. Why did the clip appear when it did? Why was it removed so quickly? Why did reports of an alleged incident emerge shortly afterward? These questions shifted the discussion from passive viewing to active investigation. Online audiences began building timelines, comparing accounts, and searching for hidden connections between events. As the conversation evolved, it began to focus on a broader issue: the balance between storytelling freedom and real-world consequences. On one side of the debate are those who believe documentary creators should have the freedom to present material as they see fit, without fear of external pressure. From this perspective, even uncomfortable or revealing content is part of the purpose of documentary storytelling: to expose, explore, and challenge existing narratives. On the other side are those who argue that when content involves real individuals with established reputations, the responsibility becomes more complex. In industries where perception directly affects opportunity, influence, and legacy, the way material is framed can have lasting consequences. From this perspective, selective editing or lack of context can unintentionally reshape public perception in ways that affect real lives. Neither argument has reached dominance, and the disagreement continues to fuel ongoing tension in the discourse. Online platforms have become the central stage for this unfolding narrative. Users dissect every available fragment, clips, screenshots, alleged messages, and timestamps. Even small details are treated as potential clues. The timing between the leaked footage and the alleged incident remains one of the most heavily debated aspects. To many observers, the close proximity of these events feels significant, even if no confirmed connection has been established. In the absence of clarity, coincidence and causation become difficult to separate. Complicating the discussion further are additional circulating claims suggesting that the leaked material may only represent a small portion of a larger project. According to these unverified reports, the released clip was not the full version, but rather a fragment of a broader documentary that has yet to be seen. This idea has intensified speculation, as it raises the possibility that more revealing material could still surface. If true, it also raises new questions about how much context remains unseen, and how future releases could reshape the entire narrative. At the same time, 50 Cent's silence has become one of the most discussed elements of the situation. For someone known for frequent public commentary and direct engagement with media narratives, the lack of response stands out. Some interpret this silence as strategic, suggesting that he may be observing, planning, or waiting for the right moment to respond. Others interpret it as caution, implying that the situation may involve sensitivities that have not yet been made public. Either way, the absence of communication has not reduced attention. Instead, it has intensified it. As speculation grew, another wave of alleged developments began circulating online. A short, unverified clip reportedly appeared showing a chaotic scene in a dimly lit environment. The footage was unclear, fragmented, and difficult to interpret, yet it quickly became the focus of intense online analysis. Viewers slowed it down, zoomed in, and attempted to identify individuals or confirm whether the clip was authentic. Despite these efforts, no definitive conclusion was reached. The ambiguity itself became the driving force behind continued discussion. Alongside the visual claims, reports of additional leaked material began to surface, including alleged messages and audio fragments. One message reportedly warned of escalation, though its source and authenticity remain unverified. Another audio clip allegedly contained fragmented phrases suggesting tension and urgency. While none of this material has been confirmed, its circulation contributed to a growing sense of instability within the narrative. Each new fragment added another layer of interpretation, without resolving existing questions. What makes the situation particularly complex is the way digital platforms amplify uncertainty. In previous eras, incomplete information might have remained contained or faded over time. Today, however, any fragment, whether accurate or not, can circulate widely within minutes. Once shared, it becomes part of the public record of discussion, analyzed alongside other fragments and woven into evolving theories. This creates a continuous loop where speculation feeds engagement, and engagement fuels further speculation. As theories multiplied, a central idea began to dominate discussions: control over narrative. Many observers argue that the core of the controversy is not just about what was filmed or leaked, but about who has the authority to shape how that content is interpreted. In industries where reputation is deeply connected to influence, control over storytelling becomes a form of power. The ability to define context, frame events, and guide interpretation can shape outcomes as significantly as the events themselves. Within this framework, the involvement of 50 Cent becomes especially significant. His history as both a performer and a media figure positions him uniquely within the conversation. Over the years, he has been associated with projects that challenge public narratives, highlight conflict, and blur the line between entertainment and reality. Supporters view this as creative transparency, while critics see it as potentially provocative framing. This dual perception contributes to the intensity surrounding the current situation. Meanwhile, industry insiders, according to circulating claims, suggest that the documentary may include references to sensitive or previously undisclosed events. These claims remain unverified, but they have added another layer of speculation. If true, they would explain why reactions appear so strong and why interpretations vary so widely. In environments where reputation is central, even the suggestion of exposure can create significant concern. As more time passes, the absence of resolution becomes itself a defining feature of the story. There is no single confirmed version of events, no unified explanation, and no clear endpoint. Instead, there is a collection of overlapping narratives, some based on observation, others on speculation, and many on interpretation of incomplete material. This fragmented structure makes it difficult to distinguish fact from assumption. The alleged timeline continues to be one of the most analyzed aspects. A leaked clip appears. Shortly after, reactions emerge. Then reports of an alleged confrontation surface. Following that, additional fragments circulate. Whether these events are truly connected or simply being interpreted as such remains unknown, but the sequence itself has become central to how the story is understood. Ultimately, what is unfolding is not just a discussion about a documentary or a set of leaked clips. It is a broader examination of how information moves, how narratives are constructed, and how quickly perception can shift in the digital age. Each new fragment, whether visual, textual, or audio, adds momentum to a story that is still in progress. And until verified information replaces speculation, the conversation will continue to evolve. Because in a story built on uncertainty, silence does not end the narrative, it extends it.